All right.
We're live.
We sure are. Amazing. We have a new face here today, so please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Amanda Montgomery. I am an associate at CAD Management. And my phone is currently ringing, so awkward.
That's okay.
Home phones, you know how it is. Living with Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. I am a current student at Berkeley College of Music and again, an associate at CAD Management. So super stoked to be on this live stream with you today and, interviewing our incredible panelists.
Absolutely. Very excited. We, have had so much interest in this topic and, specifically talking to venues. This has been such an interesting and also, important topic to continue interviewing people in this space. So let's go ahead and you want to give them a rundown of what we're talking about today in general. We're talking to venues. Mm-hmm. Who is the first person that we're introducing?
So today we have Jacob Geskin, artist manager and talent buyer at Berlin Under A and Lola NYC.
Of course, yes. And we also have Stephanie Boriskin. She's a talent buyer at the Bowery Electric, and we're really excited to go over and discuss all the things that we've been talking about, in our venue-specific panels. We've done 2 so far, so this will be our 3rd one. And let's go ahead and bring them out.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just go through. I'd love to have a more in-depth introduction for each of you guys. So why don't we just start with Jacob? Give us the rundown about you, where you work, all the goods.
Sure, yeah. Before the world came crashing down, I was talent buying for a couple different venues in the East Village, Berlin, and Lola. Both about 200, 250 cap venues, hosting music pretty much every single night of the week or most of them. On top of that, I manage a few different bands, artists in New York City who have also abruptly had things change. And then also I work with Headcount, which is a music-based nonprofit that registers people to vote. Formerly, until coronavirus, this was mostly done at live events, mostly concerts, festivals, and other kinds of live events. And right now, they've also transitioned to digital, but still registering people to vote.
Awesome. And Stephanie, go ahead.
I've been in the music industry in some way, shape, or form for the last 10 years, but specifically for the last 6 years, I've been working at venues. I worked for the Surf Lodge out in Montauk, which for anybody who knows anything about New York and New York City, it's kind of like the end of the world. It's a very, very tip of New York State. It was a seasonal property, about 500 capacity venue that also had a bar and a restaurant and hotel, and we booked kind of national acts. It was a little bit of a destination for much larger scale artists like the Janelle Monáes and Flaming Lips of the world. And then from there, about a year and a half ago, I moved over to the Bowery Electric, which is a smaller 250 cap venue on the Lower East Side, and we do music, like Jacob was saying about his venues, about 7 nights a week. We have 2 floors, so it's 2 floors, 7 nights a week. We're talking 40 bands a week, and that's mostly what I've been doing for the last year and a half, is just focus on that.
Awesome. Well, Amanda, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, sounds great. So kind of jumping into the first question, as the ongoing coronavirus pandemic continues to wreak havoc on the live music industry, venues and artists around the country are being forced to think outside the box when it comes to playing for an audience. The most recent innovative thing is drive-in concerts, which have started springing up as an alternative. I was just wondering, kind of hearing your insight on new innovative trends that you're seeing due to COVID, things that you're starting to see pop up, as well as what you think the future would be.
Sure. I definitely have heard about the drive-in series all over the country. I come from a family of musicians as well, so it's something that my whole family talks about pretty regularly. I think it's a really interesting take on it. One of the things that I've also seen now that things have started to open with the drive-throughs is instead of just having cars, you have kind of like car, and then you have space for a very small group of people to kind of gather that's within COVID guidelines and a place where you don't necessarily have to socially distance, but everyone's wearing a mask, and it kind of gives the ability to kind of move with the times and how, you know, not everything needs to just be a car, but as things become a little bit safer, they are trying to find a way to kind of bring in physically standing in a venue of sorts, as long as it's open air. I think for closed venues, I have, to be honest, no idea what that looks like. But I thought that that's really interesting how like the drive-through thing is something that kind of quickly popped up. I thought it was a really, really great idea. I think it poses some potential issues for the smaller bands, which is something that my venue tends to focus on, is the smaller bands. But I've always found that to be a little bit interesting. Like I said, how things kind of keep evolving.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's important to notice that like the drive-in thing is definitely interesting and all that stuff, but it can't be the only solution. You know, I've seen a lot of like, you've seen the posts on social where it's like the circles of like the white circles where people can sit in different sections in their own little like ecosystem per se to still be able to social distance but be in gatherings. And I feel like that's, at least in open air situations, that feels like a pretty good solution for now.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Jacob, would love your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, the drive-in concerts are so intriguing to me. I think it's I think it does speak to people really doing anything for human contact. I know in New York City, at least the last couple weeks, outdoor seating for restaurants has started to open up, and in cruising around in Williamsburg and other neighborhoods where there's typically a lot of live music or clubs going on. I've actually seen a couple tables set up outside on the street, and then they'll have a DJ spinning on the inside, and it just feels very it feels really good to be back here and having a semblance of live music of that capacity. I think it's great. Outside of that, something that I've really liked that has come to be over the last couple months are these festivals who have so many different acts that they had to cancel, doing fully virtual festival events over the course of a weekend. Obviously, it's not getting people that in-person contact that they are pining for, but it's innovative in a way that I've seen a few of these festivals do, if not entirely live stream festivals, then a lot of archival footage and so on and so forth. And it's definitely no replacement for the real thing. But I think I've definitely tuned into a few of them, and it's been holding me over for sure.
For sure. Well, you know, what have you guys been noticing in the live stream perspective as venues are trying to create some sort of transitional pathway beyond not having live shows? Are you seeing, whether it's where you're working or from peers who also work in other venues, are live streams doing anything to support the venues? Is it valuable? What have you seen best practices in that kind of allows some sort of revenue streams from it? What are you guys seeing? We'll start with Stephanie again.
What I've seen personally is, I think when it comes to a venue that has the ability to kind of really host, for lack of a better phrase, like a larger band with a larger following, that is, as it would be normally, is going to be a little bit more lucrative. But the paywall kind of structure of live streams, I think, is a little bit tricky, especially now. There are people who, you know, can go to a concert for $10 normally, but given the scope of what, you know, the country looks like right now, a lot of people are out of work and can't necessarily afford or don't want to risk spending 10 or 15 or $20 on a live stream, especially when one of the biggest complaints that I've heard and have noticed about live streams are that kind of attendance and engagement tends to dip after about 20, 30 minutes. And I guess that's understandable, considering I think a huge part of what live music is the ambiance and the atmosphere of being in the venue and seeing it live. And live streams do a good enough job of translating that to the viewers, but it's definitely not the same thing. And I think that that's potentially where the biggest struggle is trying to find out and figure out a way for venues to give the live music experience to an audience when it's not live.
Definitely.
Yeah. Jacob, thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, I agreed with all of that. I have also found that, yeah, as much as people are obviously struggling all over the country right now, there's also a lot of solidarity, especially in the music industry. So some of the best returns from friends of mine or people that I know that have done live streams have been from the donation-based approaches to it. Honestly, the majority, obviously, so many artists are losing just about their entire revenue stream or a huge percentage of it. But I've found that the majority of people, they just really want to play music and they really want to just continue connecting with people as they can. They want to continue with their releases that they had planned, despite not being able to do release shows anymore. So I think that anything that fosters any kind of engagement with people, like people are doing right now, and a lot of that is just, hey, like, we're struggling, I'm struggling, I'm going to do this show for you because this is the only thing I know how to do. Doesn't matter if you can't be here. If you can support me, please support me. And I found that to be sort of, like Stephanie was saying, a much better recipe for success for everyone involved. Of course, that being said, it's not entirely a sustainable business model to rely on charity as your primary revenue. But I think we're all hoping that this doesn't last forever, and I think a lot of the important engagement that people are making right now, even if as Stephanie said, attendance dips after 20 or so minutes, hopefully people remember that moving forward. And something that we've all thought about is maintaining a presence during all of this. So it's not like we fell off the face of the earth during this time period, even though everything has changed. Hopefully we maintain our engagement with people and stay in their minds a little bit. And I think that's sort of primarily, it's just so hard to make enough money to sustain these businesses the way they were without the actual audience. So I think that's really what we've been aiming for, from my point of view.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting that you bring up the whole donation-based live stream, because it is really hard to put a hard set ticket amount on something that has always been free for the most part, live streams. So we actually had the CRO Bands in Town on our last live stream, and he was talking about engagement-focused sponsorships and VIP experiences and all merch as ways to kind of monetize these things. Because again, I'm used to watching a live stream for free on Instagram, and what's the likelihood that I'm then going to pay $5, $10, $15, so it's kind of something to think about. But speaking of venues, when concerts do hopefully return, social distancing measures will likely cut capacities of venues somewhere in the neighborhood of like 30 to 60%. So are you guys looking at utilizing live streams as a way to kind of subsidize costs, or when venues eventually do have concerts again?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're thinking about. I think it's just like in New York City, as it stands right now, venues can't open until phase 4, which isn't going to be until July 20th at the very earliest, and that's like assuming everything goes perfectly well, which obviously we've seen all over the country is not happening. So at the very earliest, we're looking at like the end of July, and our capacity, should we be able to open, we're an indoor venue, which means we'll be running at 25%. So for a venue that's a 200 to 250 cap, we're talking about 60 people, and that's not really sustainable. Maybe it fortunately could be in other places, but New York City, just with rents what they are, it's just not sustainable. So we've absolutely talked about running live streams and finding a way to kind of make these great VIP experiences and doing all the things that the CRO of Bands in Town was talking about with like special merch and creating fan engagement in a way that that really encourages people to come out, but doesn't exclude a wider swath of the population who maybe doesn't necessarily feel comfortable yet going into a music venue with like an indoor space that, even with social distancing measures, is going to be a little bit tighter than what they've been used to for the last 4 to 6 months, depending on where you are. So yeah, I mean, it's for smaller venues like that, I think it's just about getting creative and finding ways to utilize revenue streams that you probably didn't think about before.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And to add on to that, I actually think that a positive that could come out of all of this is that for a lot of venues, especially the smaller ones, I think a live stream will be an important factor of the business going in lockstep with live performances in the future, not only as a revenue source, which, as Stephanie pointed to, might be crucial, especially at the very beginning while there's capacity restrictions. But I think that it's actually something that, in retrospect, we should have been utilizing more, building up this audience of people that can't go to a show every night but might want to catch a band that they like. I know before my talent buying days, I was trying to see bands every single night of the week, but of course I wasn't able to do that. So if there had been maybe a capability for me to tune in and see what was going on throughout the week, I think that would have been something I was interested in. So, potential optimistic outlook that this is something sort of maybe will be industry standard moving forward. I think it could be a good thing.
Yeah, I personally think it's a great idea and should have definitely been adopted a long time ago. But, sometimes it's necessity breeds invention and intervention and all of the things. So kind of building a new strategy around that is going to be good, I think, along the way, regardless. But while we're on the topic of reopening, I mean, let's talk about safety. People are going to be tentative coming back to shows and trying to figure out if that's the right thing for them to do. And even probably after a vaccine has, come to fruition, that doesn't mean that people are still, I feel like the mindset has shifted on like, wow, we were dirty and nasty and we were like in each other's faces. And now I'm thinking about all the germs all the time. So I feel like that shift is going to affect, regardless of the fixes or not, how people engage in a tight space. So, what have you guys been talking about? What have you guys been seeing that are kind of those additional cautious measures? Are you guys going to be providing masks? Are the masks going to be branded with a logo and maybe all the social media everywhere? Like, what's the plan to make people feel comfortable through this transition?
I think for us at Bowery, we have kind of talked about it, but we don't have a full-fledged plan yet. And I think that's because we are at least 3 weeks away from kind of really, really needing one. But we've talked about it even with the live streams. Like we just started a live stream series this past Saturday. And even with the live stream series that we're talking about, if we have multiple bands on the same day, we're talking about everybody gets a different microphone. Like, it's not cleaning the mics, it's everyone gets a different mic. And with that, it's okay, well, once there are people in the audience, they should be standing a certain ways back from the stage. So we can maybe keep everyone in the venue safe. And if you're not right in the face of the singer, it's one thing for a guitarist or a drummer or somebody who doesn't really need any vocals to throw a mask on. Another thing for a singer to do it. I think if it was, 1 song or 2 songs, it'd be a reasonable ask. but I think a singer trying to sing with a mask for 60 minutes it's a big ask. And so it's a matter of, just making sure that everybody in the venue just feels as safe as possible. So it's sanitizing, it's social distancing, it's making sure that the bartenders and the barbacks are also, wearing gloves at all times, and just making sure that everybody in the venue feels safe. I know it's something, like I said, that we've discussed kind of in the abstract, but because we are so many weeks away from having to actually open, we don't have like a full-fledged plan yet, because obviously the situation is also so fluid and there's new information coming out all the time. We just want to make sure that once we actually have a plan, that we're able to execute it, and we're not, we're not left with like our pants down and like people are getting sick. We want to make sure that if we're going to open, we want to do it safely.
Yeah, and in the same vein, it's actually, the way I see it is we have to be the absolute peak of sanitation standards compared to just about every other industry, because I think it's going to be the tightest, sweatiest space, and people are singing, and then on top of that, as we've seen around the country, as things have opened up in certain states and so on and so forth, it's like, especially a certain age demographic, which is the demographic that goes out more often. As soon as you let people go out, they're gonna really want to go out. I know that personally. I've just been dreaming of the day that I can get back into a sweaty basement and push some strangers around and have them push me around. And I don't think I'm alone. And there's, we have to be able to we have to anticipate that people are going to come out, and we have to build a sustainable strategy so that, the biggest fear on my end is we open up, we have a great turnout for a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden we're back to March and have to wait another 4 months before anything can start opening. And there's almost no in between. We have to. It's going to be a mixture. It's going to be a mixture, like we said, of live streams, of extreme sanitation. Going to be. I know a lot of different businesses are checking temperatures at the door. I don't know how effective that is, and I think, to Stephanie's point, I don't think we really know even what it's going to look like when we're allowed to open. So it's something that everyone, I think, we're taking very seriously, and we'll put whatever we need to into place to make it happen. We're going to need the music industry and live music is important to a lot of people, and as we've seen all over the country, people will come out as soon as they can. So we got to make it as safe as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like entertainment in general is such a needed aspect in society. It's how we blow off steam. It's how we allow ourselves to engage in a cultural piece of the world that is just so necessary for our hearts. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were like, I wonder if when venues open back up, they're going to add these crazy plastic screens in front of, the stage, so that they're like almost boxed in, and they don't have to wear masks, and they can be all nasty as they want, but there's this like weird plastic barrier like you see at the grocery stores and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, but then we're basically seeing them in another box. It's might as well just keep them on the screen on your phone and on your TVs and stuff. But it is an interesting, there's no certainty on what's going to come out of this. And I think, we can play all day long, but until we get to that point in these major cities, it's all fair game.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me, I once saw the band OK Go perform at this little venue in Pittsburgh, and they actually had they had this huge translucent screen that they played behind and projected their shadows onto it, and so it was pretty cool. But OK Go might be the only band that could pull it off. So I don't know.
Hey, maybe this is the future of how entertainment will be experienced. Hey, you got to get creative. That's pretty cool. I wonder if there's any video of that online.
Should go find it.
Yeah, seriously. Amanda, what you got for us?
Well, talking about all of this opening up, it kind of brings up a unfortunate reality that a ton of venues probably will not be able to open up after this. A recent NEVA study, they surveyed their 2,000 independent venues and promoters that are members of NEVA, and 90% of venues reported that they will go out of business without government funding within 6 months of closing. I was wondering if, get your opinion on, if there's talk on, what your venues need from either, do you think that labels or larger companies should be stepping up during this time to support independent venues? Should there be government funding? I'm just interested in kind of hearing the conversation around that from your perspective.
I mean, I absolutely think there should be government funding, but it's been a really, really long time since governments of any kind with any political affiliation has ever really cared about arts and entertainment. I think a lot of the time when funding gets cut, it gets cut from arts and entertainment. It doesn't get cut from math or tech or sciences. For whatever reason, entertainment, I think, is viewed as just that, entertainment, and it's not a necessity. But I think in general, yes, there should absolutely be government assistance. I think given the nature of the music industry, it's easy to become jaded and pessimistic about things. I think there's a lot of competition, and it would not shock me if a lot of larger companies came in and wanted to buy up places that are going out of business to kind of expand their portfolio. But I also, Jacob was talking about it earlier, I do think there is a sense of community within the music industry, regardless of the scale of the organization, whether it's like a Live Nation or an AEG or a network of small independent venues that are owned and operated by one or two people. There is still a sense of community, and I think that's why the music industry has been able to come together, at least on the independent scale, and kind of troubleshoot of fundraising ideas and ways to kind of bring this to the forefront, that it's like, so many industries are suffering, hospitality, like all these industries are suffering, but music is one of them too. And if 90% of independent music venues across the country shut down, it's gonna be a problem. It's like music is like a lifeblood of this country and the world in general. And I think that there are people who see that keeping us alive is necessary. But unfortunately, I don't think the government is one of those places.
Yeah, it is unfortunate that it's always the first thing that gets cut. There's such a lack of respect for that, in my opinion. It just feels really strange to me because everyone enjoys it. It doesn't matter where you lean or what do you believe, like you still enjoy and take advantage of what arts and entertainment has to offer. So it's like, if you don't want to fund it, maybe you shouldn't be invited to the shows anymore, exclusive to only people who support. Thank you very much. But Jacob, any thoughts from you too?
Yeah, actually, I also approach the government funding issue from an economic perspective. I actually got on the phone early on when we had our first NEVA meetings with every single independent venue in New York City, of which there are many. And they have multiple studies proving or showing that that for every dollar that's spent at these music venues in neighborhoods in New York, another $10 or $12 is being spent there. So it's actually driving revenue in these neighborhoods. Just walking around New York, the neighborhoods by the venues. It's part of the social lifeblood of each neighborhood, and part of clearly the economics of it. So it's sort of like it's sort of in a way like a stone that's holding together this building of each neighborhood, and frankly, like the ramifications of venues going under is a little bit bigger than just, we'll have one fewer place to go see live music. It really will, inalterably change the makeup of these neighborhoods, and and will probably have a negative effect all the way down the ladder. And who knows who's going to buy up these properties too, which is a scary thought too. I mean, I don't know if we need more high-rise apartment buildings in New York to replace our beloved music venues. So absolutely, I think that it's in everybody's interest for there to be some kind of economic intervention, and like you mentioned, Neva has shown that it's going to be crucial for these venues to stay open.
Have you seen any rise in like utilizing the venue spaces for other business things that can be done to kind of find a way to reopen temporarily for different purposes? Like, is that an easy transition that can be done? I know that we spoke with some people in another panel where they were like, yeah, you know, we have also offered our space as a like a practice space to bands, just to allow some funding to come through our venue and our stages. At least then it's still music, but you know, it's more of a private experience that's allowed. But I also wonder, like, is there a way to, you know, shift the business purpose temporarily because of COVID and allow other forms of business to move forward temporarily in the space? Like, is it an arts center now? Is it something else now that can at least bring in temporary revenue so that the opportunity of closing doesn't happen?
I think so for Bowery, it's something that we kind of have always done, as like we have kind of all these other revenue streams, but I think for us, given the size of the venue, it doesn't really make a lot of financial sense for us to do that, just given the utility cost. Because what we don't want to be doing is, if we do open it up for like a rehearsal space or something like that, we would need to make sure that somebody's there monitoring the equipment, because it's our equipment. It's not their equipment that somebody's just bringing in. You know, there's still alcohol out at the bars, because we don't have enough storage to stock literally 2 full big bars worth of alcohol and just like put it away. So just the utilities and the staffing costs for us to do something like that makes it a little bit prohibitive. But there are other ways that we've kind of discussed it. I know using our space as kind of like co-op working space is something that we've talked about, because we do have the luxury of having 2 floors. Because of that, we can socially distance really, really effectively, and still be able to get a lot of people doing something like doing this kind of co-working stuff in the building. But I think in general for us, like, yeah, we've talked about it, but a lot of things unfortunately are cost prohibitive for us at the moment. It's actually less expensive for us to just stay closed. Like it's kind of like the situation with Broadway theaters. Like, they've kind of said, hey, if we can't operate at 80%, it literally makes no sense for us to open, because we're going to be losing money. In order for us just to break even on all of our productions, we have to be our 80% of our seats need to be filled. And obviously venues are like smaller music venues are a little bit different, because so much of it is operated off the bar sales. But you know, it's at least a similar thought process, which is, if we're going to be losing money trying to come up with a new revenue stream, then it doesn't make sense for us to do it at all.
Absolutely makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
I personally have scheduled a couple of small film shoots and that kind of thing, which is not unique to Corona. But we every once in a while would rent out the space for TV or film shoots to do their concert scenes or anything like that, or music videos or something like that. I have a couple of them scheduled at Berlin for the next couple months, but those are also likewise dependent on people feeling comfortable coming to the space and being allowed to do it. And certainly the ones that are doing it are very small. We have had TV shows come in with over 100 people in staff, and 20 cameras and their own lighting setup and all of that. That's not possible for us anyway, given the restrictions on social distancing. So even though there are theoretically other revenue streams, it's not something that we've really been able to do. I know Bowery was selling drinks on the street in East Village for a little bit. Not sure if they still are, but I know a lot of bars and venues are transitioning to doing sort of on the street bar sales as New York has relaxed their open container laws. But similar to the live streams, really all of the money generated hardly even is worth it. It's really more just to keep the name associated with people and to continue engaging with people, so that we don't fall off the face of the map, and so that hopefully we can hit the ground running whenever we can open up again.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of going back to venues. So we saw in 2008 major consolidation after the recession with major banks. Do you see that happening with venues? Kind of be acquired by Live Nation or AEG to survive. I'd love to hear your take on that. We can start with Stephanie.
We haven't specifically heard anything about it, but like I said before, it would not shock me if a lot of these smaller venues, especially ones with kind of like name brand value and like standalone value on their own, it wouldn't shock me if some of them started getting bought up by bigger venues, especially because there's a lot of large scale operations like a Live Nation that has their own kind of roster of artists and has their own so many, like it's like an umbrella company for so many other organizations and like agencies and booking managers and things like that that have their own roster as well. So it wouldn't shock me if places like Live Nation started coming in, because I think it would also potentially help their brand. I don't think a lot of big organizations like that, big companies like that, have a lot of smaller venues. And I think in general, a lot of the smaller venues are the ones that are independently owned and operated. And it would just kind of help their brands as well as stop 90% of music venues from going out of business. These independent run venues from going out of business. I haven't heard anything about it, but like I said, it would not stun me if over the next couple of months, especially as places start to reopen, and places find that a 25% or 30% capacity business model is unsustainable for them. It wouldn't shock me at all if some of these venues started coming in and buying up some properties, for sure.
That makes sense. It's inevitable at this point.
That all being said, I know that they obviously have a lot more capital to do those kinds of things, but like Live Nation, AEG, and all those big companies, they're also struggling hard right now. I don't think those businesses really operated with a lot of liquidity, and sort of were growing at a rate that was only sustainable if live music was sustainable, which it abruptly stopped being. Not to say that they won't come in and buy venues, because that would be logical, and also
Oh no, that's okay. We'll get him back.
Yeah. But just actually piggybacking off what he was talking about, yeah, as he was saying, like a lot of these bigger companies like an AEG and Live Nation, they also, while they do technically have a lot more capital, just given like how large they are, a lot of them are also based off like massive stadiums and arenas, and that's what they book. And that stuff's not coming back for a year at least. Like I know the mayor of Los Angeles already said that there's no large scale events like that happening until at earliest, I think, the fall of 2021. So places if large cities like New York and LA and all the ones with stadiums involved, if those become obsolete for the next 12 to 18 months, like yeah, Live Nation and AEG, those places are going to struggle too. Like even places like Terminal 5 that have like I think it's like a 1,700 cap or like a 2,200 cap or something like that, for them to operate at 25% is, like I was saying, unsustainable. So while yes, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of these venues came in and started, or a lot of places like Live Nation and AEG came in and started buying up spots, it also wouldn't surprise me if they end up like really, really struggling as well, because their biggest source of revenue is just gone for the next year and a half.
Yeah, it's unsustainable for sure.
Yeah, speaking of Live Nation, as of May 13th, Ticketmaster, which is owned and operated by Live Nation, has processed more than, what is it, I think $600 million in refunds, the Ticketmaster president. So, and Polestar estimated about a $9 billion loss in ticket sales if venues remain closed through 2020. So how are you seeing independent venues handle ticket refunds? How is it impacting your business? I would love to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak to Bowery just because I only know the inner workings of how our company works. But for us, one of the things that we did, you know, as soon as like we knew back in, you know, early March that this was going to be a thing that was a problem. So that COVID was not going to go away in a couple weeks. So we actually rescheduled, I think, about 2 months of performances. And I think what's pretty standard with venues and refunds is that if the show is postponed, you don't get a refund. That said, when we did reschedule all of these shows and have been rescheduling all these shows consistently for the last couple of months, we have, you know, sent out an email to all the ticket buyers. And one of the things that we have seen as a small venue is that more often than not, ticket sales really, really increase in the couple of weeks before a show, unless it's an underplay, or it's a band that like people are really, really obsessed with, or it's a touring band that doesn't come to New York that often. So for a lot of our shows, we didn't have a ton of tickets to potentially refund anyway. But when we did reschedule, you know, we were like, hey, your ticket will be honored. Just, you know, keep in touch. And we did get a couple of people who were like, hey, I'm out of work because of COVID. I need this refund. Like, I need that $35 that I spent on these 2 tickets. I need that. And when something like that happened, like, yeah, we refunded it. I don't know what other smaller venues were like, but I know we definitely got really lucky in the number of people who were asking for refunds, in that it was not that many. I don't know if that's just because people, like, the shows got rescheduled and people were cool keeping their ticket, or they just wanted to show support for the band and the venue, or what. It could be a combination of both of those things. But I also wouldn't be stunned if when we open again, we're starting to do shows again and the shows get a little bit closer, people start asking for more refunds. It's definitely more financially viable for us to give refunds when we're actually open. When we're closed, it's tough to do that. But like I said, for us, we've been really lucky, but anybody who's wanted a refund has been able to get one. We're not trying to keep people's money in the middle of a global pandemic where 40 million people are out of work.
Obviously, yeah. Oh, look who we got back. I don't know where we left off with you. Do you remember what we were asking you before you left?
We were talking about some of these larger companies coming in and buying the smaller venues.
That's it. Do you want to give your thoughts?
My one thought was that I wouldn't be so sure that they're just going to come in and buy all these venues, because they are also struggling a lot right now. And I know they're laying off people. I know they're taking out loans. And though it might make sense for the future, and it would be great for a lot of venues not to go under, I wouldn't rely on them to do exactly the right thing or the smart thing for us. You know, just as much as I'm not going to rely necessarily on the government doing the same thing for us. So that's all I had to say. I'm just I'm not exactly as confident as I might be in these large corporations.
That makes sense. That makes sense. We have a question that came in the comments, and I'll just read it word for word. So using the NHL as an analogy, I know certain teams, when selling playoff game tickets, they black out purchases from zip codes in the opponent's team area so that only fans of the home team can buy these tickets. What is your take on transitioning this strategy to the music industry? It could create a sense of exclusivity and not overload or burn out fans with multiple live streams. Anyone who has an answer, happy to hear it.
I want to take a stab at this one just because I happen to love hockey and very much am aware of this thing that NHL teams do. It actually prevented me from going to see the Penguins win the Stanley Cup in 2017 in Nashville. I tried to get tickets and I couldn't. So I'm not a big fan of it from that perspective. That being said, for the live streams, I see the appeal here, especially if they're doing these live stream tours, which some artists have started doing. As a sort of matter of principle, I'm typically not about excluding people in any sense, but I do think that perhaps doing like a 7-day run of live streams where each one's different and from a certain location, it's a really interesting concept because I do think it would force people to be like, oh, this is an artist I like coming to my town and seeing them. So exactly, yeah. It's hard to say. I don't know if I would buy it or not. I don't know if it's a gimmick, or I don't know if it's on the other hand, maybe it'll get people together. It'd be cool if they got like something, maybe they had like the mayor of the city come and talk about coronavirus or something. Some of these live streams have definitely been doing sort of discussion panels similar to this one, interlaced with music. Certainly the ones that Headcount has been a part of. So, I could see it being as like, especially a large artist with a huge following. I mean, you come and get Bruce Springsteen to do a 7-night tour at 7 different cities and have the mayor of each city talking about the coronavirus efforts and staying indoors and all of this stuff. That could be an interesting topic, but I will never forgive the Nashville Predators for keeping me from that game.
That's fun. Yeah, I mean, I could even think just like them connecting with local businesses from that city and helping also promote them as they're also struggling too. So maybe there's a way to kind of create that. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah, and just to bounce off of that, I think we saw with Lion Babe, they geofenced an event to specific locations. So it kind of, got the community around. I remember I went on their website and I tried RSVPing for something not in New York, and they were like, no, you can't RSVP for here. It's not for you. So it's definitely interesting to see how these live streams are starting to build around a specific community. We have another audience question. It says, how should managers and artists go about booking digital tours with venues?
So really good question. I think, I mean, just from where I sit, I think it's going to be something that definitely starts popping up a little bit more. It's these like kind of like virtual venue tours, or even physical venue tours. Like just artists have the ability to kind of still travel around the country, but the venues might not be like hosting like live shows, but they might, as we were talking about before, be open to kind of having somebody come into the venue and play in an empty venue and stream from the venue. I think, I definitely know Jacob can speak on this for sure because he manages a couple of bands, but from a venue perspective, I mean, I think it's just a matter of finding out which venues are open to something like that. And I think potentially live streams are a really good way to do that. Because I know there are venues that are like Bowery's one of them, letting artists come in and use the actual physical venue for their live stream. So I think it would potentially take a little bit of research, but I think any venue that's already utilizing their actual space for a live stream would of course be open to something like that. But I'll definitely throw this one over to Jacob, at least to talk about the booking side of it for the artists.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the live streams is something that Stephanie touched on earlier in the panel, that, and I can speak from personal experience, they don't really hold your attention for as long or in the same way that that live events do. So really the number one thing to consider with live streams in general is the audience reach. So how many people are you going to reach in this manner? And it's super unpredictable. You know, I've done live stream events through Headcount with a few like major artists. We had like Alex Ebert from Edward Sharp, and you know, we did a conversation with him, got a few hundred people to watch that or something along those lines, and it had nothing to do with him or with what we were doing or anything like that. It's just the reach is super unpredictable. On the other hand, I'm going to refer back to Bruce Springsteen, who did a benefit thing for New Jersey, and he reached a couple million people. That all being said, when it comes to booking a tour at a venue, what you're really looking for as an artist is one of two things. One, can you go to this venue and actually play a live show like Stephanie said? If so, that's unique enough that I think even just out of boredom or to try something new, I think artists are interested in doing. And second, what is this venue's social reach, which often is not even correlated to how big of a venue is, how good of a venue it is, what kind of acts they book. So that all being said, it's like I wouldn't necessarily look to venues as the first partner I would go to for live streams, unless they are doing a lot of live streams and they're succeeding, which a lot of them are. But you know, if you want to book a digital tour at the venue, just hit us up. Go find our emails, and we'll try to book you. We'll do our best.
Well, you know, we're getting to that point actually in the evening where I'd love to get both of y'all's takes on, you know, what are your predictions for the future? What does the venue industry look like post COVID-19, or even just in general? What do you think the music industry looks like post COVID-19? We'll start with Stephanie.
That's it's definitely an interesting question. I think there's the really like optimistic part of me that's like, when there's a vaccine, like people feel more comfortable and in 6 months it'll all be fine. But then there's like the real part of me that's like, that's an insane take. No. But I mean, I think I definitely think a vaccine will be extremely helpful. One of the things that I also think is that venues in more consistently temperate weather, like in the South and the West, who have the ability to kind of do open air venues, I think those will be successful more quickly than a traditional indoor venue, just because one of the things that we are seeing as this kind of as this evolves is that open air, as long as people are wearing masks, it seems to take a good chunk of the risk in transmitting out of it. But I would love to think that, you know, by early 2021, at least some venues are at least close to fully operational. I don't know if that's a pipe dream. I really hope it's not. But I do think that, you know, the industry is going to evolve. I do think more live streams are going to come into play. I think the type of artists are going to be different at each venue. I think because of capacity issues that are definitely going to linger at least through the end of this year, there are going to be artists who can sell 300 tickets that instead of playing at a 300 or 350 cap venue, they end up playing at a 600 or 650 or 700 cap venue because that's technically considered a sellout. So I think the scope of the artists who are playing in each type of venue is going to be different for a little while. But it's also just going to be based on, I think, location. As we've seen over the last couple of months, every state is handling things differently. And I think, unfortunately, as much as we would like it not to be, they're all tied together. So it's just going to be a little bit of a roll the dice and see what happens and kind of just take it as it comes. But like I said, there's a part of me that's like, everything's going to be fine when there's a vaccine. And then there's a part of me that's like, that's stupid. Don't say that.
Wishful thinking. I mean, we all want that, obviously.
Exactly.
We even had we even had a question come in just now that was like, you know, for venues where it may not be viable to copy the city winery concept, aka the venue plus restaurant, could venue partners like with local food trucks for a socially distanced street festival? And I actually, you know, that kind of goes with your prediction on like outdoor venues, lots of that kind of working. I feel like a street festival that's socially distanced and partnered with the city, I feel like that has a lot more of an opportunity to find success for venues rather than, you know, continuing on with just a traditional trajectory.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think it's actually something that when I first started working at Bowery, it's something that we talked about doing, is like trying to get permitting to close down the street in front of us. And it's probably something that we'll explore doing. I think by the time we actually like get up and running, it'll be maybe a little bit too late in the season for it. But yeah, I mean, I know restaurants right now are allowing extra seating on the closed. It's like 67 miles of closed streets in New York City. So it wouldn't surprise me if venues started taking advantage of that too and doing more things outside.
Absolutely, absolutely. What do you?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely be trying to throw more festivals outside, more food involved in all these things. It's going to be tough for certain venues. I know Berlin is underground, so the efficacy of that might be tougher there. But it's also attached to other bars that are above ground level, so some form of that for sure. I think that ultimately we have seen coronavirus get more or less under control in some countries. So I also want to be optimistic and say that that will be possible in the United States. That, of course, remains to be seen. And like I mentioned earlier, until we do have it under control, it's going to be really hard to both ensure people's safety and deal with the number of people that we're used to servicing. And then from the artist perspective, what I've been pushing with artists, and I'm sure all around the country and around the world, what people have been pushing is, unfortunately, you have to, for better or for worse, just rely on your recordings to be a more significant part of your revenue stream. So that means working perhaps with publishing companies in situations that you wouldn't, making sure that you're really pushing your streams and something that's been great throughout the coronavirus has been Bandcamp waiving their fees several times so that you could get a more significant chunk of money directly for your music. And of course, that all ties in together with, I think that as streaming exploded, artists, it both evened the playing field a lot for a lot of artists to get their music out, but then also devalued music in a certain type of way again. And a lot of artists relied on live music as a primary source of revenue, which has been sort of the standard for many years. But I think the industry as a whole going forward might have to reconsider that. And from the venue perspective, I'm not convinced that, you know, Live Nation saying that it's now up to the artist to be getting paid less is really the way it's going to happen. You know, if anything, I think that tickets will get more expensive. If we have to have a 25% capacity at our small venues, we've historically relied on the bar to make money, not ticket sales. So that might have to change a little bit if we can't, you know, if we can only have 25% capacity or something like that. But ultimately, just the ways that people make money, I think another difficult thing with New York City specifically in venues is that we typically, if not exclusively, rent our venues versus in other smaller cities. It's easier to actually purchase your property, and obviously everyone's hurting, but if you also have rent to pay this whole time, I can imagine it's a little tougher. There's no mortgage freeze or anything like that. So maybe it'll change slightly. Instead of 20, 30-year leases, maybe there'll be a path to ownership for some of these venues outright, so that they can withstand something like this. Maybe, as we said, some of the bigger corporations will buy them up for better or for worse. And in the meantime, artists have to rethink their strategies for making money. Maybe it means more releases, which is already becoming an industry trend. Some of these people releasing albums with 40 songs on them, because if you have a fan base, you're making money off of every one of those songs, you know? So all of those things I think are going to be factors, and then also live streams. But as we've seen, outside of the jam band community, they're not really making that much money. Though jam bands have figured it out, I will say. They've somehow managed to because jam bands are probably the most reliant of all the music industry folk on live music. They have also dedicated fan bases willing to pay for live streams, and always have. So
is that actually what's happening? Is they're charging for their live streams and people are really paying for it? Well,
it's actually, I would say probably 80 to 90% of them are archived concerts. But they have, that's a thing with, especially with jam bands, is when you go to see your favorite band 50 times, you're interested in seeing all the other iterations of their songs that they've done in the past, so you can keep score. And so that's actually, yeah, people pay a subscription fee to see some of their bands. I know like Fish is doing one like every Tuesday or whatever. I don't know if theirs costs money, but I'm sure they get tons of viewers on it, because that's the whole thing. So every niche of the industry, I'm sure, will have their own way of dealing with it. The way we've dealt with it has been from the artist side to push recordings.
Makes sense.
Well, thank you all so much for joining this panel. So much phenomenal insight. We really appreciate it. If you can let everyone know where we can find you online, and also if there's anything that you'd like to shout out at this time, it'd be great. Maybe we can start with Stephanie. You're muted.
There it is. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you can find me. You can actually go to www.theboweryelectric.com. My email address is right there. It's also just stephanie@theboweryelectric.com. Or you can send me a DM on Instagram at Stephosaurus1030. I have a thing about dinosaurs, apparently. Yeah, and I just want to actually, it's going to be really cheesy. I want to make a shout out to my bosses at the Bowery Electric. They've been really, really incredible through this whole experience. The open lines of communication that they've had with me. Just, I was on the phone with one of my bosses yesterday, and he made a joke that we talk more now that we are closed than we did ever when we were open. So it's I want to just make a shout out to them, and really just kind of let everybody know that they've been really kind of incredible through this whole experience and been as open and as transparent with me as they could be, from back in early March when they were like, hey, you're going to need to get on unemployment, you're going to need to get on it now, kind of to our whole team, just kind of, letting us know the lay of the land so we weren't, left stranded like so many millions of people were, to, just being open to ideas that I've had and having, like I said, open lines of communication through this whole process. It's been tough, but they've been really, really incredible.
So humble. I love it. That's a beautiful shout out. I love it.
And I am able to be found at my email. Feel free to email me if you have any questions about anything. It's jacob@eastvillainy.com. That's EASTVILLAINY. That's just my little promoter company that I throw shows with and also do artist management out of. Also, you can find me on Instagram. It's Geskin. So Keeps, EM, and then my last name, Geskin. I'm a big fan of the puns. I just want to shout out specifically some of the work that me and my team have been doing with Headcount, which I haven't gotten to speak that much about. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit that's registered over 650,000 people to vote over the last 10, 15 years. Just 2020 was going to be our biggest year ever. We hired a bunch of people. We're on the ground in 45 states, multiple shows every single night of the week, on tour with all these artists. That all came, of course, crashing down in March, and the team there has just incredibly picked up the pieces and completely pivoted the entire business and are firing at all cylinders, registering people to vote on all of the major live streams in the country, working with all the festivals, socials, working with every major artist to make sure people vote. It's more important now than ever. From every perspective, everyone needs to get involved, and that's something that we've always believed music has the power to do, to get people together and make change. It's been a very change-worthy time, I would say. So we're all doing everything we can to have a more equitable future for everyone, which is what I like to believe music is all about. So yeah, thank you all the people at Headcount. Thank you so much for having us on this panel. It was great talking to you. It's great to see you, Steph. It's been a while.
For sure. It's been a long time.
Thanks so much, and talk to Amanda.
Happy. Yes, absolutely. Thank you guys so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you both and to have my amazing co-panelist host, Amanda. You guys have been awesome. It's been such a great time to talk with all of y'all. Whoever is listening, please go vote. We need this shit to change, okay? I don't care what you're doing. Go vote, everybody, and support local music because we need that more than ever right now. So lots of things. I'm yelling at you guys. You need to know it. So happy to have you guys. We will have this entire panel on our YouTube tomorrow, probably. So if you're catching it at the end, you can watch it all over again tomorrow on our YouTube. You guys can catch us on Instagram as well. Let's fast forward. You can find information about these guys in the recap that's going to get written up about this on our LinkedIn newsletter, which everyone should go follow as well. And we're just excited to be here and looking forward towards the future because things will get better as long as we all stick together as a community. I wholeheartedly believe that. So, as much as we can spread information, share insights, and grow together during this time, that's what we need to do. So again, thank you guys so much. Amanda, if you have anything you want to say, feel free to.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is my first Fast Forward hosting, and I have bronchitis, so thank you for, yeah, that's why I sound like a 13-year-old boy going through puberty.
You did great.
Yeah,
you sound great.
You did good.
So, thank you for just being amazing panelists and for allowing me the opportunity to be a part of something like this. So,
yeah. Well, thank you guys. This was great. I had a really good time.
Awesome. We'll definitely all connect after this. But thank you guys. Have a beautiful evening. Look forward to the next one. Awesome. Let's peace out.